before they happen.
Ever get that strange, electric feeling, the kind that hits before anything actually happens? A quiet signal in your mind that tells you something is shifting, long before the rest of the world notices a thing. Most people ignore it, but you've felt it sharpen over time. You've watched event after event unfold exactly the way you sensed it would. And the unsettling part? Other people start noticing too. They call you lucky, weirdly intuitive, or strangely accurate, like you're living out the kind of calm, hyper-observant awareness you'd expect from a modern on-screen character. The type who walks into a room and reads everything without saying a single word. That's the Sigma trait. Sigma males have a habit of predicting outcomes before they happen, not because of magic and not because of some mystical gift, but because their mind works on a completely different level. They spot problems before the cracks appear. They sense when a relationship is dying even while the couple is smiling. They can feel tension in a room before anyone speaks. They read behavior, patterns, energy, motivation, almost as if they've already seen the script while everyone else is still rehearsing their lines. People call it intuition, but what's happening inside the Sigma mind is far more precise. It's pattern recognition, emotional calculation, strategic awareness, and an ability to sit in silence long enough to actually notice what everyone else is too distracted to see. This isn't mysticism. It's a cognitive skill, one Sigma men develop naturally because of how they move through the world. Quiet, observant, analytical, detached, and never blinded by noise. Today, we're breaking down exactly why Sigma males see things before they happen, how this ability forms, and why it feels almost prophetic to everyone around them. Alright, let's dive into the first reason. Reason 1. They map patterns over time instead of reacting in the moment. Here's the average person's approach. Something happens, they react. Another thing happens, they react again. They leap from event to event without ever stepping back to connect the dots. Sigma males don't just watch events. They watch the timeline. They track how situations evolve, how behaviors shift, and how small changes ripple into bigger ones. They aren't focused on the moment, they're focused on the trajectory. Most people see events as random individual moments. Sigma men see them as pieces of a much larger pattern. Imagine this. Someone has a bad day at work. For most people, it's a one-time thing. But a Sigma notices it's the third time this month. He notices the shift in management behavior. He notices the subtle tension in meetings. He connects it to the company's financial cycle. To anyone else, the signs are random. To him, they form a pattern pointing somewhere very specific. This is the same process used by the people who saw the 2008 housing collapse long before it happened. They weren't magical. They were tracking patterns, skyrocketing home prices disconnected from real value, the aggressive rise in subprime lending, debt ratios that didn't make sense, and historical warnings that looked eerily familiar. Most people didn't see it because they were emotionally obsessed with the idea that housing prices would keep rising forever. They were reacting to events, not studying the pattern. The Sigma mindset sees the timeline, and once you track patterns over time, prediction becomes almost effortless. Reason 2. They observe without emotional attachment. The core of real predictive power is the ability to observe without letting emotions twist what you're seeing. This is where Sigma males hold a massive advantage. Most people look at the world through an emotional filter. They see what they want to see, ignore what makes them uncomfortable, and interpret everything through their hopes, fears, and insecurities. And that emotional investment creates gigantic blind spots. If someone is in a relationship that's quietly falling apart, they won't see the red flags because they're emotionally clinging to the idea that everything is still okay. Someone working at a failing company refuses to see the collapse coming because they desperately need their paycheck to be safe. Someone hyped up about an investment trend can't admit the trend is dying because being wrong would hurt their ego. Sigma males observe differently. They evaluate situations without needing them to turn out a certain way. They don't attach their self-worth to outcomes, and because of that, They see patterns with a level of clarity most people never achieve. It's not coldness, it's clarity. When you're not hoping for a specific reality, you're free to see the actual one. A Sigma male can look at a friend's relationship and know months ahead of time that it's about to fall apart. Not because he's gifted with some supernatural ability, but because he notices the subtle but consistent signs the couple can't see through their emotional haze. The fading affection, the creeping resentment, the quiet detachment, the mismatched futures they casually talk about. Each little detail means nothing on its own, but together, they form a pattern so obvious that it practically glows. Most people skip over these patterns because emotion distorts their vision. The Sigma sees them because he isn't hoping. He's simply watching. And that observational clarity looks like prediction, even though it's just accurate pattern recognition. Reason 3. They process multiple variables at once while most people think in straight lines. Most people think in straight lines, simple chains of A causes B and B causes C. Sigma males don't operate like that. Their minds work on a system level, constantly juggling multiple variables at the same time and quietly mapping how those variables influence one another. That's why when a Sigma makes a prediction, it feels almost impossibly complex to everyone else. He isn't basing it on a single factor. He's synthesizing a whole ecosystem of moving parts and seeing where all those pieces are drifting long before anyone else notices. Take something as simple as predicting whether someone will succeed with a new business. The average person gives a shallow two-variable answer. Do they work hard? Or is the idea good? Very basic surface-level thinking. A Sigma male's mind doesn't stop there. He's subconsciously weighing 20 different elements at once: market timing, actual skill versus self-reported skill, starting capital, the entrepreneur's lifestyle needs versus the income curve, whether their partner is quietly supportive or silently resentful, their resilience under pressure, the business model's weak points, the competitive landscape, potential regulatory shifts, emerging technology trends, and a dozen more nuanced components. And here's the interesting part. He's not sitting down and consciously analyzing these one by one like some spreadsheet robot. His brain has been trained through years of observation, reflection, and systemic thinking to process all these variables automatically. So when he lands on a conclusion, it looks like a prediction, but in reality, it's the inevitable outcome of deep, multidimensional analysis happening beneath the surface. This is why a Sigma can glance at a situation for a few minutes and form an assessment it takes others months to uncover. He doesn't think faster, he thinks in more dimensions. While most people are examining variables in isolation, the Sigma is studying the entire system. And when you look at a system instead of isolated events, you start noticing emergent patterns that linear thinkers never see. You don't just see where things are, you see where everything is heading. Reason 4. They recognize patterns that can't sustain themselves. Some patterns look stable on the surface but are structurally doomed underneath. They can't keep going forever. Something in them is fundamentally unstable, and the moment the conditions change even slightly, the entire pattern collapses, often dramatically. Sigma males have a natural sensitivity to this kind of instability. They can feel when something works for now, but cannot possibly continue under the same conditions. This is why certain Sigmas warned about crypto implosions, real estate bubbles, relationship breakdowns, job disasters, or the sudden collapse of certain social movements. They weren't psychic. They simply spotted patterns being held together by conditions that were destined to shift. Imagine someone maintaining a lifestyle that requires them to earn far more than they actually do. They're basing their daily life on an income jump that would be unusually high by any historical standard. That lifestyle may look polished and impressive today, but it's sitting on borrowed time. Most people think, well, they're keeping up now, so it must be fine. A Sigma male sees the inevitable correction long before it hits. He may not know the exact timing, but the trajectory is unavoidable. The same principle applies in social dynamics. Think of a friend group where one person constantly takes while everyone else constantly gives. That imbalance cannot sustain itself. Either the givers burn out, or the taker eventually pushes the limits too far. The exact moment is uncertain, but the collapse itself is a guarantee. Spotting unsustainable patterns is like watching a person juggle more and more balls. You don't know which second the drop will happen, but you'd never bet on them juggling 20 at once forever. Sigma males see this impossible juggling everywhere: markets, relationships, business models, career paths, and even social structures. They're not foreseeing the future. They're seeing structural instability in the present. Reason 5. They understand incentive structures. This is the hidden lever behind most accurate predictions. If you understand the incentives driving someone's choices, you can forecast their behavior with startling accuracy, whether they're conscious of those incentives or not. Sigma males instinctively break down incentive structures. They're always asking, what is this person really optimizing for? What benefit does each decision offer them? What constraints are shaping their choices? What outcome is actually rewarded here? It might sound cynical, but it's simply realistic. People respond to incentives even if they don't admit it, sometimes especially when they don't admit it. A company might preach about valuing work-life balance, but if the people being promoted are the ones clocking 80-hour workweeks while those who set boundaries quietly disappear, the actual incentive structure reveals something very different. The Sigma sees this instantly and predicts that any new policy about work-life balance will be more for show than substance, because unless the incentives change, the behavior never will. This holds true everywhere, in relationships, workplaces, political arenas, even friendships. Understand the incentives, and someone's next move becomes almost obvious. People often react to incentives without even realizing they're doing it. When you understand what someone actually gains from a situation, not what they say they want, but what their incentives quietly push them toward, their behavior becomes shockingly predictable. So when a Sigma male senses that a coworker is going to betray the team, he's not being paranoid or dramatic. He's simply breaking down the incentive structure. That coworker benefits more from personal advancement than from keeping the team stable. And when personal gain and group loyalty eventually collide, which they always do, the incentive that offers the biggest reward wins. It's not betrayal. It's predictable human behavior. Most people cling to stated intentions. They listen to what someone says they want. The Sigma looks at the forces actually shaping their choices. That's why his predictions come true while everyone else is caught completely off guard. Reason 6. They trust behavior, not words. People lie, not always maliciously, but they lie all the time. They lie to others. They lie to themselves. They paint ideal versions of reality because the truth is uncomfortable. And most people take those verbal statements at face value. When someone says they're fine, they believe it. When someone insists they're committed to a project, they assume it's true. When someone says they love their job, they take the statement literally. Sigma males don't operate on verbal declarations. They calibrate themselves to behavior. They watch what people do, not what they claim they're doing. They track patterns of action, not patterns of speech. And because behavior is the real truth while words are often camouflage, Sigmas gain a huge predictive advantage. A manager can stand in front of a team and say the company is thriving and everyone's position is safe. Most employees swallow that whole because they want to believe it. Meanwhile, the Sigma notices the subtle things, the fact that the manager has suddenly polished his LinkedIn profile, the quiet meetings he's been having with people in other companies, and the hesitancy to approve long-term projects. The words may sound comforting, but the behavior tells a completely different story. Words can lie. Behavior rarely does. And by reading behavior, the Sigma sees what's coming long before anyone else has the courage to admit it out loud. This applies everywhere: relationships, politics, business, social groups. The Sigma male who predicts his friend's divorce isn't guessing. He sees the friend working late more often, avoiding mention of his wife, making big purchases without consulting her, and spending more time with single friends. The words insist everything is good. The behavior practically screams the opposite. Most people gravitate toward words because words are comforting. Sigma males study behavior because behavior is honest. Reason 7. They've absorbed historical patterns into their thinking. This part is often overlooked, yet it's one of the most crucial. Sigma males tend to be lifelong observers of history, psychology, culture, and human behavior, not necessarily through formal education, but through reading, reflection, and paying attention to how people behave over long periods of time. This creates a mental library of patterns. So when modern situations begin resembling certain historical dynamics, they pick up on the echoes instantly. It's not the cliché history repeats itself. It's more like the deeper patterns of human behavior quietly resurfacing in new forms. A Sigma male who accurately gauges political shifts isn't dabbling in prophecy. He sees patterns he's already encountered in past political movements, ideological cycles, and power structures. The names, faces, and issues change, but the underlying mechanics follow recognizable arcs. The same goes for economic cycles, social change, technological adoption, and even relationship dynamics. Most people have no memory of past cycles, so everything feels brand new and unpredictable to them. But the Sigma has absorbed enough historical examples that when familiar patterns reappear, he recognizes them immediately. This doesn't depend on academic knowledge, though that can help. It comes from understanding how humans behave under pressure, prosperity, uncertainty, temptation, and conflict. That kind of understanding forms a deep internal database. And once you have that database, the present becomes easier to read because you've already seen versions of these patterns before. Here's the deeper truth. What looks like future prediction is actually clearer perception of the present moment. A Sigma male isn't gazing into the future. He's observing the present so thoroughly and seeing so many underlying patterns that the future becomes the logical continuation of what's already happening. It's like watching a line of dominoes that are already tipping over. You're not predicting anything. You're simply recognizing the chain reaction as it's unfolding. Most people only notice the dominoes that have fully fallen. The Sigma sees the ones that are still in motion, identifies the structure of the domino line, and understands exactly where the collapse is heading. People often look at the same situation, the same details, the same pieces of information, yet process them in completely different ways. And this is exactly why the things a Sigma male predicts usually sound ridiculous at first, right up until reality confirms every word. The clues were already sitting in the present moment, hidden in plain sight, but most people never train their minds to recognize them. So when a Sigma explains what he sees forming, it feels to everyone else like he's forecasting the future, when in truth he's simply describing what's already unfolding beneath the surface. The beautiful part? None of this is mystical or inherited. It's a skill set anyone can develop, and it starts with learning to observe without letting your emotions distort the picture. Watch a situation unfold the way a scientist watches an experiment, noticing what's actually happening rather than what you want or fear to be happening. This kind of clean observation takes practice because emotional bias kicks in instantly and unconsciously. But once you build that discipline, the world begins revealing patterns you never noticed before. Then comes the long game, recognizing patterns over time instead of reacting to isolated events. Stop treating things as one-off moments. Start noticing connections, the subtle loops, the repeated behaviors, the ways similar situations resolve again and again. Keeping a journal accelerates this dramatically. Months later, you'll look back and realize you're seeing storylines repeat with eerie accuracy. Study systems thinking too, the art of understanding how multiple forces interact at once, instead of imagining life as a simple chain of cause and effect. This one shift multiplies your predictive ability almost overnight. And above everything else, pay more attention to behavior than words. What people do will always reveal more than what they claim. The gap between actions and promises? That's where genuine truth hides. When analyzing any situation, break down the incentives. Write them out. Identify what each person is genuinely motivated to gain or avoid. Then predict based on incentives, not declarations. Combine that with a steady habit of studying history, psychology, and human nature, and you'll slowly build a mental catalog of patterns, a database that helps you recognize when the present mirrors the past. But here's the part people rarely talk about. This ability has a cost. You'll sense chaos forming long before anyone else even feels a shift in the air, and the truth is, you won't be able to stop most of it. You'll warn people who shrug it off, who laugh, who tell you you're overthinking, only to watch them walk straight into consequences you practically begged them to avoid. You'll notice fractures in relationships that still look perfect on the outside. You'll read tension hidden behind smiles. You'll predict the breakdown before the people inside it see the first crack. And for using that clarity, you'll be labeled negative, paranoid, overly analytical, dramatic. Not because you're wrong, but because most people can't recognize a threat they haven't personally felt yet. And when the moment comes, when your prediction becomes reality, they won't thank you. Many will resent you, because your accuracy forces them to face truths they were never emotionally prepared to confront. That's where the quiet loneliness comes in, the kind only Sigma males truly understand. When you're the only one who sees what's actually happening, you end up carrying that clarity alone. And once your mind starts seeing the patterns, you can never go back. Ignorance might be bliss, but clarity removes that bliss forever. Still, most Sigma males would choose clarity every single time, because their sixth sense isn't mystical. It's trained. It's earned. It's built from disciplined observation, long-term patterns, systems thinking, behavioral decoding, incentive mapping, structural analysis, and a mental archive of historical parallels. These aren't supernatural talents, they are skills, learnable, sharpenable, weaponized through practice. And yes, they take patience. They take courage. They require the willingness to stare reality directly in the face, even when it's messy, uncomfortable, or painful. But the payoff is massive. You move through life with insight most people don't even realize exists. You sidestep disasters others walk directly into. You make decisions with clarity while everyone else reacts with emotion. Just remember, the clearer your vision becomes, the more isolated it can feel. Not everyone can see what's obvious to you. Not everyone is meant to. So if you've ever been called crazy, negative, or too intense, right before your predictions came true, drop the word patterns in the comments and share the moment that proved you right. And if you're ready to sharpen this ability even further, hit subscribe and join the Epic Persona community, where we break down the psychological tools that elevate your perception and upgrade your entire life.